All right, this is for exam one in business ethics. I'm going to be tackling the question on utilitarianism as well as the question pertaining to the case study found in the textbook. So I'll start off with utilitarianism. Utilitarianism's main goal is to achieve the greatest good for the greatest amount. Good is what is considered to give people happiness or pleasure. The right action made in a moral dilemma is the one that leads to the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people. So, utilitarianism focuses on the end rather than the means, unlike Kantian theories. Um, but two objections that could be made for utilitarianism. One being it could lead to justifications for morally incorrect actions such as killing a person. Um, Utilitarianism, for example, like if there's a mob mentality of killing one person, the mob mentality is right because it would achieve the greatest amount of happiness or pleasure for the greatest amount of people, even if the person who's being acted against is not in the wrong. um, there's still, it's achieving the greatest amount of good for that mass. So it doesn't really matter if that person is convicted of something that they didn't even do. Um, Objection to that, at the center of it, that is what utilitarianism aims to do. So it doesn't really matter what the means are. It's the end of it, and the end is the person being murdered or killed, and that results in the greatest amount of happiness. So the goal of utilitarianism is still achieved. Yeah. So a second objection would be um, it requires that we sacrifice um, a lot for a moral theory. It can put us in compromising positions, such as the trolley problem is a great example. A runaway trolley car uh, going towards five people, and you can change the path, the trajectory of the trolley car to go towards a person tied up on one track, just one person tied up on another track, um, and that would result in one person dying versus five people dying. Now you don't know like what the roles of these people are, but in the end, doing so would create greatest amount of good for the greatest amount because five people are alive and happy to be alive versus one who is dead. Um, but that puts a lot of mental anguish on a person having to choose to kill one person over five. Um, so that is questionable, but objectively, um, under utilitarianism, um, following utilitarian principle, it's doing right as by switching the tracks to one person. They're not really using. Um, it's just going off the same objection, really, and just being like they. It's the greatest good for the greatest amount. It is the ends that matters. So under utilitarianism, that's right. Um, Yeah, and then the second question is based on the case study. There's a couple of things to like kind of pick out here before we get into it. We've got Carlton, who's a new intern at this firm. We've got Todd, who has taken Carlton under his wing. And we've got the firm itself. Todd is really the biggest stakeholder in this because he was caught by Carlton to have explicit sites show up on his search history. Now, a couple things to consider. One, Carlton did go on Todd's computer without informing Todd that he would be going onto his computer. So that's an breachment of privacy. That is not right. That's not good. Also, you can't really discriminate a person for their sexual preferences. Now, taking that sexual harassment code into consideration and the fact that the textbook does mention the extensive code of ethics that the firm has employed. Um, it's still, it's a little weird, like getting on explicit sites on a work computer and presumably in his office. Um, but at the same time, it's, Carlton is broaching on that privacy. Um, he so there's that factor. If he goes and reports this to like somebody in a higher position, then um, I mean it's obviously puts Todd's job at jeopardizes Todd's job, but also really Carlton's, depending on like their stance on privacy and employee invasion of privacy. Um, or Carlton could ignore it, um, and he could choose not to pursue that. I personally think that it's wrong to access that kind of material in a work environment. Um, but I think doing so, I don't think Todd sounds like a good person. He sounds like he does his job. Um, doesn't sound like he's had any history of harassment or anything sexual in the workplace. Uh, but there's a number of things to consider, I guess.